That is carried, and now we move on to the hearing of submissions, some of whom we've already heard in relation to the specific items that have been included in amongst the long-term plan, which is why we simply adjourned yesterday's meeting. So now I'll invite each of the community boards to come forward, and the first one is Waipapa Papanui-Innes Community Board.
Kia ora koutou, thank you for having us along to speak to our submission today. I've got Simon Britton, our deputy, with me today. Our Waipapa Papanui-Innes Community Board is pleased to see the council stepping up and making a commitment to taking action on climate change. We are generally supportive of the draft strategy, especially the way it breaks such a significant issue down into manageable, understandable steps, making it less overwhelming and more likely to encourage people to participate and support it. We are encouraged by the leadership role that Council is prepared to take through this draft strategy and the partnerships which are talked about throughout the document. One area this strong Council leadership needs to come through in is reducing Council's carbon emissions. We note that the target of 2030 for Council to achieve net carbon neutrality in its operations does not seem all that ambitious, especially when other major corporations around the country are already achieving carbon neutral status. We would encourage you to bring this target forward. Our board supports the focus on a communications and behaviour change program in Programme 1 of the draft strategy, but believe this public education should be further emphasised throughout the strategy. Council needs to be bringing our communities along with it as we deal with climate change, and education is the key to getting people on board with this. With regards to Programme 7, Low Emissions Transport System, our board is extremely supportive of the focus areas outlined in the draft strategy, especially the increased education and incentivising of sustainable transport use. Finally, while we appreciate the need for this strategy to be reasonably short, concise and simple, our board would like to see more detail on how the strategy will be implemented, including the associated risks and challenges. Thank you.
Thank you. That's very sharp and to the point submission. So, but what that has done is it has left a lot of time for questions. So I'm sure that councillors have got questions for the community board. Jimmy Chen.
Yeah. Particularly you mentioned council take the lead and also partnership with the community. Can you explain to us more detail how to partnership with the community? What kind of community? The scope of area?
It's the community as a whole. We realise there's a lot of work going on with programs for schools and that sort of thing. There's that education part of it, but it's the wider community as well. And yeah, as I said, it's that education and bringing people along the journey with us. Yeah, do you have anything to add to that?
Thank you.
I've got James Daniels and then Sarah Templeton.
Kia ora, Emma, Simon. You mentioned low emissions transport. I don't think it's in your written submission.
Is it not? Okay.
No.
Well, it's sort of, we support the general thing. We just wanted to highlight that. And,
yeah. So what do you mean by that? How, can you articulate that a little more? What you're
it's
supporting?
the giving people the options of getting out of cars, or incentivising the use of electric vehicles and public transport. And I mean, we're well on the way with what's been going on in some areas of that, the likes of the cycleways and that sort of thing. But again, it's that public education. Yeah. Did you want to add anything to that?
Oh, just to note that in the document itself, it has a figure of 54% of the district's greenhouse gas emissions are from the transport sector. So it's clearly a large area that's going to need to have some shifts and change over this, through this strategy.
Yeah. So you mentioned cycleways at one stage there. So does that your low emissions transport options include the lowest emission of cycling? And so what do you want to see us do more of? Leading question, I admit.
You're probably asking us in more depth than we've discussed it as a submissions committee. My response to that, though, would be to continue the work on programs such as the major cycle routes and also local cycle connections, and specifically around cycleways. The content that's in there for that program 7 on low emissions transport system around walkable neighbourhoods, trips other than in single passenger vehicles and so on, is certainly consistent with the discussions we've had around a board table.
Okay, I yield.
Sarah?
Kia ora kōrua. The focus on council's emissions, which I completely get, so we've got the 2030 target currently for net neutral. Should the emphasis be on emissions reductions as the first port of call? So quite a few companies, you mentioned others have, other large organisations have gone net neutral, and much of that is by buying credits, if you like, and paying someone to plant trees. Are you looking for us to take that tack and be net neutral earlier, or to focus our energies and our spend on mitigating our emissions as well as our own tree planting rather than just offsetting? So that might be too detailed.
I think there's got to be balance.
Yeah.
Yeah, you've got to be realistic, but yeah.
Yeah, it's probably a level of detail that we don't see in the strategy as well, in terms of that. I guess that's the comment around asking for more detail.
Yeah.
Against that goal 1 of net zero, we see the end date of 2030 as the target, but there's no content in there or commentary around whether that's by offsetting, for example, by reduction and so on.
But the focus should be on emissions reduction first, and only offsetting where we need to, if you like.
That would be my personal view, but I don't know if we could speak for the board on that, given that we haven't discussed it.
Thanks.
Yes.
Melanie?
On the transport, we've got in the long-term plan about more PT lanes with a plan that actually goes slightly beyond the long-term plan. Do you think we should be bringing this forward?
Where possible, yes.
And you can answer more to that as well, but I was also thinking that these climate change strategies that we really have to really develop, I think, to put the implementation plan together. Do you think that people would be prepared or to pay more basically for rates as what it's going to cost over the next few years? Do you think that's something the board might support or you might support?
Yeah, we haven't discussed that sort of detail.
Anne?
Kia ora. I'm interested in what you're saying about education and I think layperson's language in terms of communicating, and I wondered if you could tell us a bit more about that and how have you thought about how that could look, because I think it's a real challenge for us.
Yeah, it is a challenge, but I think this draft strategy is a good starting point. It does simplify it and it breaks it down and it makes it really understandable. So I think it's just building on that. Yeah.
Mike?
Thank you. When you look at the transport section of it, do you think there should be, because obviously we have our goals and we know that transport is a key contributor to the emissions, do you think we should have a clear pathway that shows that actually this is what we need to do to actually reach that goal we want to get to?
That's really it, that is what
Yeah,
we talked about.
yeah.
More detail.
Having that plan.
Right. Good. Oh, Tim?
Yeah, as we're going through our long-term plan at the same time, setting up the next 10 years, and we've got these goals that we've put up, with regards to people saying, or some people saying, that we should be sticking to our core infrastructure, etc., those key things, do you believe that this is one of those key things? So when people talk about the 3 core, is this, say, the 4th one, or do you see it separate, or it's just that our budgets are limited, as we all know, and there is going to be a cost to everything we do, and there's a bigger cost if we don't do things. So I'm just wondering where you sit with this.
Yeah, I believe it does need to be right up there.
Yep.
It's got to be a priority with everything council does now. It's putting this lens on it.
Thank you. Cheers.
Thank you. Well, look, that's everyone with the questions. So thank you very much for your presentation and for answering questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you.